Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the wilds of Suffolk. I'm out here yet again doing what I do, walking along in beautiful locations such as this, giving you my thoughts and opinions on things that are happening in the world, in the public consciousness. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, or 1,318 I think there are of you today, welcome back, or welcome one and all. It's a pleasure and an honour for me to have you join me. So thank you very much, one and all. So today, as you can see, there's a bit of sunshine here. It is gorgeous out. It is absolutely beautiful. I'm in shorts and t-shirt today. It's been a bit cold here in the UK, but I hope it's lovely wherever you are in the world. So enough of the weather report. You've come here to to hear this nonsense. So I'll try and stick to the trees today because there is a little bit of wind around. So I'm trying to keep the wind noise down as much as I can. Not from me, obviously. As the title suggests, this video is about events that are happening right now in the world, and what they're linked to, if they're linked at all, what I think it all means, and where I think it's going. So the video is titled Moves and Countermoves, which is what we're seeing. So let's see if we can tie some of these threads together and give you the sort of the broader overview of what I see, and then try and sort of pick out some bits and pieces that I think are relevant to the direction of travel for the world and how I think this plays out. Okay, so how hard can it be, right? So obviously the first thing we have to touch on, of course, is Israel and Palestine. Now, I'm not going to pick sides here. I'm not going to side with anyone. I've got Palestinian friends. I've got Israeli friends. I've got Israeli friends who live in Israel right now, who, when we all saw those videos of the things that took place there, I was worried about them. I was worried about their safety. I sent them a message over to find out, make sure they were safe. And as it turns out, they were, which is wonderful. But there's, as with all these things that are happening, you know, incursions, excursions, you know, it's the innocent people who are trapped in the middle who are the ones who are getting hurt. Now, what we saw in Israel doesn't make any sense, okay? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, Israel it's the most protected, one of the most protected places in the world. Massive border wall. Okay, massive border wall, but the walls are racist, remember? We were told that under Trump. So, massive border wall. They have the most impressive, or oppressive, however you want to view it, the most impressive and oppressive defense and attack capabilities in the world. They have the most hardened border than anywhere. Defense systems, missile defense systems, walls, obviously, all those things to keep it safe. And still, a bunch of people came in on parachutes with the best description I've heard of this, with lawnmowers strapped to their backs, you know, like with the big fans, you know, the ultralights. Apparently, there was a bunch of people, you know, hundreds of people who did that, took these parachutes into Israel, Palestinians apparently, and no one knew about it. You know, you've got, now I've mentioned many times before on this channel how I see the intelligence services, intelligence, right? So intelligence services, MI5, MI6, FBI, CIA, Mossad, you know, all the intelligence services across the world listen to every phone call, read every email. They don't personally, it's not they don't have people sitting down reading your emails or listening to your phone calls. It's all done through AI, of course. So the intelligence services across the world, CIA, Mossad, the most connected intelligence service in the world, Mossad, yeah, that's Israeli intelligence, by the way, for those who didn't know. Same Mossad that I believe had one Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell working for them. Honeypot, anybody? Oh, I like honey. So Mossad had no idea that they had thousands of these people who were buying these parachutes, training with them, being able to fly them in Palestine. No idea that all these parachutes were coming in, all these missiles. No idea. So what's the intelligence services for again? Sure, it's like all that data collection they do and listening to all the phone calls and emails and all those kind of things. What's that for again? Oh, that's right, to safeguard the people, right? Right? So if the intelligence services are safeguarding the people like they say they are, and they have all these tools at their disposal, what happened? How did Israel have such a how did these small group of rebels, this Hamas or however you pronounce it, how is it possible that they were able to penetrate one of the most secure countries in the whole world with things like parachutes, and then thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets that they fired into Israel? How are they able to do that? The intelligence failures, I hear. I hear lots of people talking about this, and it's all the intelligence failure. But then the Egyptian Prime Minister, President, not sure which it is, I think it's President, don't quote me, said that 10 days before, Egypt warned Israel of a pending attack. So no one knew what was coming except Egypt, apparently. And they told Israel. The intelligence services didn't know. CIA, who's operating all over the Middle East. Mossad, who have spies everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Well, actually, is there probably one under here? Is there one? They're listening to me via satellite. Spies everywhere, and they had no idea. Or, what's more likely? That they had no idea that this attack was coming, and they were completely blindsided by a bunch of rebels, terrorists, of course. They were completely blindsided. The most sophisticated intelligence service in the world, with the most sophisticated weaponry and defense systems in the world, had no idea this was coming, even though they were warned 10 days before. What's more likely, that happened, it was an intelligence failure, or that they wanted it to happen so that they could go into Palestine? What do you think is more likely? Now, that said, let's shift gears again. So we have one front where Israel is about to go in heavy, hot and heavy, into Gaza and wipe out Hamas, apparently, even though there's millions of people that are caught in the middle of this blockade. So no food, no water in, no food or water in. They have one route out, and if they didn't escape, there was 100,000 people, I think, went through the corridor to escape, but there's millions of people who are trapped there. Oh, we're trying desperately not to hurt innocent people, except 2,500 people have been killed already by the bombings that they're doing. Innocent women, children, So why is it? This is the thing I keep on coming back to. I was talking with my wife about this. At some point, do we stop this cycle of killing? Where do we stop it? Well, you killed my brother, so I have to kill your brother. Oh, but then you killed my brother, so I have to kill your brother. And it continues on, and the hatred. And I understand this is thousands of years old, or hundreds of years old at least, thousands probably. This feud over the land. But why is it that this feud over this particular piece of land? What's it all about? We'll get back to that. So that's one little hotspot we've got working there, okay? Now, if you go back a few years, you had Al-Qaeda, which, go and have a look what that means in Arabic, okay? Not saying anything. Go and find out what Al-Qaeda means in Arabic, okay? Then find out who funded Al-Qaeda. Let me give you a little guess, a little hint. Starts with a C, has an I in the middle, and has an A at the end. Okay? Also funded a guy in a cave in Afghanistan who was responsible for the most sophisticated attack on America ever in history. Now, I've spoken about false flags before, but we have to bring it up again today, okay? Now, if we go back in history and we have a look at events that have taken place in history and have a look at the false flags that have led to wars. Now, Bay of Pigs was America's entry into Vietnam. Complete fabrication. Total, utter, complete fabrication. Wasn't real. That was when the Viet Cong apparently attacked a American Navy vessel in the Bay of Pigs. It wasn't. It was a complete fabrication of a story to get America to enter the Vietnam War. Okay? Total fabrication. Total. Okay? That was Vietnam. We'll keep on going backwards. How did America get into the Second World War? Something called Pearl Harbor. You remember Pearl Harbor? The entire Japanese fleet was sailing towards Hawaii. And everyone knew. Everyone knew because of the American fleet was in Pearl Harbor. Right? And everyone knew that the Japanese were on their way there. And they did nothing. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Now, many times, look at 9/11, well, you know, on the day, I was there, I was in America at the time. I was in LA to meet a film producer for a movie that I wrote. I landed on September the 10th. I've told the story before, but it's just, it's so weird how it all came out. Landed on September the 10th to meet this film producer. Next day I wake up to September 11th, okay? On the opposite side of the country, but it was just a nightmare being in America at the time. Just horrible, horrible timing. Another intelligence failure. Total intelligence failure. The guy in a cave in Afghanistan who was funded by the CIA, trained, funded by the CIA. That's how they knew so quickly who it was. Now, as I say, let's take it in a different direction. Well, I'll tie all these threads together. Don't worry. We'll come back. We'll come back around. We'll circle back. Okay. For those of you who think I should be maybe the White House press secretary, we'll circle back to that. Now, if we have another look at a different look at another front, which is Russia and Ukraine. Okay. Now, without being a Putin apologist at all, were there legitimate reasons for Russia to go into Ukraine? And I'm going to hear it. I know there's going to be people who are going to be watching this and they're like, no way, they didn't have any reason to go in there at all. Chris, you're crazy. You're a Putin apologist and you just... No. Hold up. Okay. The American Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, admitted to Congress, okay? And people say, no, it's not true. Bullshit. Go and look at it. She was in front of Congress. You can have a look at the video where she says it in Congress on live TV. So don't try and deny that it happened because it's real. America was operating 46 bioweapons facilities in Ukraine, okay? What were they working on? Things like coronavirus. Really? Really? Ukraine has been, for forever and a day, it's been seen as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Money laundering, people trafficking, organ harvesting, you name it, Ukraine's got it. I mean, it's a sad kind of title to hold, but Ukraine is corrupt as hell. And I mean, the Ukrainian people, I know Ukrainian people, they're wonderful, but the government, much like every government in the world right now, aren't they? All corrupt, trying to fill their own bags. People who have no interest in the public that they're supposed to serve, only what their bank balance looks like at the end of their term. All right, so, but it gets better. It's much better, don't worry. So 46 bioweapons facilities in Ukraine that were set up by a company called Meta Biota, okay? Now, Metabiota is tied to Hunter Biden. What does Hunter Biden know about about viruses and chemical weapons and viral weapons? Nothing. He also knows nothing about oil and gas and the energy industry. Nothing. But yet he was on the board of a Ukrainian oil and gas company called Burisma Holdings. Okay. Burisma Holdings was being investigated by a prosecutor, and at the time Joe Biden was vice president, who went over to Ukraine to go and announce that the United States was giving Ukraine $1 billion in aid, $1 billion in aid, and he said to Poroshenko, I think it was, you either fire that prosecutor or you don't get the $1 billion. And son of a bitch, he got fired. Okay. Who else did we have over there? John Kerry's son was involved on the oil and gas company. Nancy Pelosi's son as well, Paul Pelosi Jr. Not Hammer Time Pelosi. But Paul Pelosi Jr. was on the Ukrainian oil company's board with no experience, of course. So, what else do we have there? We have, so that's Ukraine and Russia. So maybe Russia did have legitimate reasons to go into Ukraine. Oh, and also, if we go back even further, for those of you who haven't seen it, Oliver Stone did a movie called Ukraine on Fire. I'll put a link in the description box below. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. It gives you a little bit of history on Ukraine and what was happening before the Maidan Revolution, which was like 2013, 2014, where they overthrew the Poroshenko, I think it was, and that was done by the United States. Victoria Nuland again. So have a look at that. Ukraine on Fire. So that's, you have the in eastern Ukraine, Russian-speaking people were getting bombed by the Ukrainians, the Nazis. The Ukrainians were bombing the eastern part of the country for 8 years. 8 years before the Russian-speaking. So before Putin, he was going to the UN General Council and complaining about what was going on there. There's video of that as well. Don't believe me. I'm crazy, remember? Do your own research. Now, at this point, I'll say to you, when I come out here and do these talks, I talk about the things that I've come into contact with, the things that I've seen, the things that I've read, the things that I've watched, the things that I've personally investigated. But don't believe a word that I say. I don't want you to. I don't expect you to believe a word that I say. I expect you to go and check for yourself. Try and prove me wrong. Try and prove me wrong. If that's what you're here for, to call me names, and people are. If that's what you're here for, then please go and check it out. Prove me wrong, and drop something in the description box and prove me wrong. Or better still, if you think you know better, then I'll invite you on the channel. We'll have a discussion and we'll both present our evidence. We'll let the audience decide who has the correct information or where to find it. All right. Now, we'll leave Ukraine and Russia behind for just a moment. Now, before we do, remember the backlash that Russia's had for going into Ukraine. Okay. Or you can't just go into another country, says America, Britain, France, Germany. You can't just go into another country like that. Whilst we go into Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I'm allowed to, but you're not. Hypocrisy much? Now we've got Israel and Palestine. We've got Russia and Ukraine. We've got Korea, North Korea and South Korea. Now, when Trump was in power, well, before Trump was in power, you had Kim Jong-un. Before he was his father, before him, Kim Jong-il. I'm so ornery. were shooting rockets to prove they are. Now, when we talk about these countries and these leaders of these big countries and the nuclear powers, now, in order to be taken seriously in the world, a country or a leader of that country has to have nuclear weapons to be taken seriously by the big boys. We are a power player. We want to join the club. So nuclear weapons are the key. Okay? Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk about Iran, which we'll get to as well. A lot of talk about Iran. Iran is never allowed to have a nuclear weapon because they're dangerous. Now, who's the only country in the world that's actually used nukes in a war? Oh, that'd be America. Wiped out tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of innocent people. And yet they're going to lecture the world on who's allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Okay. Okay. So, no, that's not to say Iran is, wonderful either. I'm not going to defend Iran, although I know nothing about Iran. I was supposed to go there a few years ago, but I didn't for a number of reasons. But I want to. I'd love to go to Iran. I'd love to go to different countries and understand their culture and meet people and talk to people. And it's, for me, I love traveling to different countries and interacting with people from those countries. And 9 times out of 10, I would say probably 99.999% of the time when I meet people from different countries, they're wonderful and they don't agree with their government. But it's the government who makes these problems for the people to have to deal with. Like, we're going to start a war with that country over there. Oh, by the way, you're going to go and fight it for me. All right, bye. And if you get your head blown off, well, don't worry. We'll give you a family a flag to remember you by. Just to say you're a patriot for going out and fighting a war for a corrupt piece of shit that's lying in their own pocket and is retiring off to a beachfront seaside mansion, even though I'm worried about climate change. Right, Barack? Okay. Or Barry Soetoro. Whatever you're answering to today, and his husband, Big Mike. Now, North Korea and South Korea obviously had the war, the Korean War, 50s, I think. Something like that. There's still tension there. Now, bear in mind that Trump was the only person who, well, first of all, all the newspapers say he's going to start World War III, he's going to start a war with North Korea. You're calling him Little Rocket Man, whilst being invited to North Korea, and was the first American president in history to step over the DMZ and walk into North Korea to meet the North Korean leader. First American president in history to do so. Then the rocket stopped. Biden comes back in, reverses all Trump's policies. Rockets start again. Not only the rockets starting, North Korea says, "Oh, we're gonna launch rockets into South Korea." Okay. Now, that's another little hot spot. We have in Europe economic decline, to say the least. Economic decline. Germany is on the verge of collapse financially and economically, and every other way, because it's taken on a huge number of refugees who are predominantly men, strangely. It's really odd, that these people are fleeing their country that they come from because of war and political persecution and all these kind of things. But it's only the men. They don't bring their wives and children with them to the new land to start a new life. Don't you think that's a bit odd? Anyway, Germany, manufacturing in Germany is grinding to a halt because the government has decided they want to go green. We want green energy. We want to green everything. Meanwhile, these new green energy systems can't keep up with the demand for the manufacturing in Germany. Now, we're going to take off on a little bit of a different tangent here, but don't worry, it's all part of the same thing. Trust me. Well, don't trust me. I wouldn't trust me. Okay, so when we're talking about this green future that we're all supposed to buy into, because, of course we want the planet to stay good, right, for our children and our children's children, and our children's 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 children, and so on down the line. So what we're told by our leaders, I live here in the UK, the US, Australia, New Zealand, all these Western nations who are saying to their people, look how good we are. Look how good we are. We have lowered our emissions. We're using green energy. We've done this and we've done that, and look how good we are. Meanwhile, all of our manufacturing has been shipped over to cheaper countries where cheap labour is, like China, Vietnam, places like that. All of our call centres here in the UK are where? India. So all the manufacturing and jobs are going offshore because people in this country actually want to be paid a living wage, because inflation keeps on happening because the government's printing money out of their ass, and the banks, we've gone through the inflation thing before, how inflation comes to be and how money is created. That people in this country who need enough to live on in their wage are not getting it because, well, we can't afford to pay you that much. Even though, the cost of living crisis. What does it cost to live? just to be alive, you have to pay. Oh, you don't have any money? Sorry. You don't get to live. You're not contributing to our society, so I'm sorry, you don't get to live anymore. So we've shipped all of our manufacturing over to places like China, where they run slave camps with the Uyghurs and harvest their organs and stuff, but that's okay because it's green. It's done in a green way. They're going to harvest their organs in a green way. But we've shipped all of the manufacturing overseas, so we're still manufacturing in the world, that is, the same amount of stuff, cars, shirts, clothing, everything that gets manufactured. It's still the same amount getting manufactured, but it's just in a different place. So we've shipped all our manufacturing and all of our CO2 pollution. I mean, fuck off with this whole CO2 pollution. CO2 is not a pollutant. I'm tired of saying it. I don't know how many times I have to say the same thing. People still argue with me. No, Chris, you don't understand. It's please. Oh, it's not the carbon dioxide, it's the methane. That's why we have to kill all the cows. What about all the wildebeest and zebra and everything over in Africa? Or do we have to kill them too? Okay. We're going to ship that off overseas as well. So all the manufacturing for these nations have gone overseas, so they can pat themselves in the back and say, look how we've reduced our emissions. Of course, we don't produce anything anymore, but we've reduced our emissions. All the emissions are produced over there in China and India and these other countries where, they're dirty, they're bad, they're not playing by the rules. Meanwhile, our countries have massive financial and trade deficits, and these countries like China are not playing anymore. They're like, no, we don't want your stinking money anymore. You're just printing it out of your ass. Like everything in the world relies on the American dollar being the world reserve currency, right? So everything's priced in American dollars. Well, people are tired of paying in American dollars, because if you've got two African countries doing business with each other, why do they have to use the American dollar? And on that note, when we're talking about African countries and money, why is it that let's just say I was born in Australia, okay? Born in Australia, land of milk and honey. Our home is girt by sea. It's a beautiful land. Beautiful coastline. We have everything there. We have everything. We have all the minerals, gold and silver. We have uranium. We have iron ore. We have, you name it, diamonds. We have it in the ground, under our feet. But the people who are born in that nation, who grew up there, who are of that nation, same in Africa, right? In different countries in Africa. Uganda just had the largest gold deposit ever in history found. A few months, last year I think it was. Uganda. Now, the question I have is, who owns the land to be able to sell it to these companies to take those minerals out to pay the government? Who owns that land? And why is none of that mineral wealth, or that the gold and silver, the oil, anything like that, why doesn't any of that wealth go to the people who are from that nation? Why does it all go through a corrupt government? Why did they own the land? And did they get to sell it to an oil company or a mining company or, and why did none of those profits go towards the people of the nation where those minerals were found underneath the ground? Oh, but they do, Chris. You see the taxes, the taxes that are buying weapons for war that we're not even supposed to be in. Those ones you mean? Oh, okay. Or the billions we're sending over to Ukraine for more weapons or to pay their pensions in Ukraine. Anyway, off the subject, but just a question I need to have answered. How much time we got here? All right, cool. We can't go too long. Okay. Now, you have all these hotspots in the world. Iran has already said when Israel goes into Palestine, they're getting involved. Lebanon's already said the same thing. Most of the Middle East, the Saudi Arabia has already said to Israel and America, stay out of this. It's got nothing to do with you. This is going to be a powder keg that is going to ignite something much bigger than a local skirmish or a squabble or, response to some psychopaths who were clearly paid to do what they did. This is going to ignite something that's going to be much, much bigger. I think that maybe China will take advantage of the fact that all this is going on. Ooh, look over there, look over there, look what they're doing over there. Meanwhile, whoop, into Taiwan. Why does China want Taiwan? They produce most of the microchips in the world that run everything. Taiwan, a little country just off the coast of China there. Well, China says that Taiwan belongs to them. Well, but America's going to be we're going to decide who have what, because we've got the weapons, we got the guns, okay? Now, I don't hold any grudges against American people. I love American people. I love Chinese people. The governments, on the other hand, fucking psychopaths. All of them. All of them. No one is talking peace. No one is talking reconciliation. No one is talking, let's see if we can find another way to sort out these crises than fucking going and picking up weapons and destroying innocent lives of people who just want to live their life and get on with shit and raise their families without the threat of war hanging over their head all the time. Psychopaths. Now, I see there's moves and counter moves going on all the time, and the exposure of these criminals to the wider audience, people like you and me, who at the end of the day have power over these people, in that our vote doesn't count for shit. So anybody who thinks, oh, but we'll just vote in the next election, bullshit. Your vote doesn't count for shit. There's no such thing as an election, it's a selection. There's an extra S at the front of the word. It's not election, it's a selection. Here in the UK, we have a Prime Minister that was never voted for. Before him, there was another Prime Minister that was never voted for. How is it that they can get away with that? With I'll take over the reins. Woo, yeah, it's my turn. How is it they can get away with that? Because the people are not paying attention. These events that are taking place in the world are making people pay attention. So people are now very critical. They're critical of Hamas, of course, because what they did, well, it's being attributed to Hamas anyway. People are very critical of Hamas, but they're also being critical of Israel's response to what happened. Firstly, they're inquisitive as to why no one knew anything, and they're also critical of the way that Israel is responding, in that they're going hot and heavy in, and they're going to kill everyone that's there. So this is going to wake a bunch of people up. Now, I've said it many, many times before, everything that's happening in the world is moves and counter moves, and it is all a way to have the average person, and at the beginning of all this stuff I said, your life is going to be impacted. I don't care who you are, I don't care how much money you are, I don't care how much money you have, I don't care where you are in the world, what kind of job you do, your life will be impacted by events that are going to take place. And it will make you look at it. It will make you evaluate how you feel about it, and what if you think that what's going on is justified. Russia, Ukraine, people are, oh yes, I stand with Ukraine. People still got Ukrainian flags up all over the place around here. Yeah, but the people are now starting to evaluate. You've got all these the Azov battalion are out there, you know, the people are starting to reevaluate and go, am I supporting the bad guys here? You know, all we've heard is Russia hacked the election, Russia supported Trump, Russia did this, Russia did that, oh, Russia invaded Ukraine. There must be the bad guys, because all we've heard about Russia in the past 6 years or 20 years, Russia bad, Orange Man bad, everyone's bad unless you follow our rules, unless you believe what we say. The media's already lost the narrative. No one believes the media anymore. No one believes the politicians anymore, because of people like you and me going out, spreading the word and asking questions of people that make them question their reality, because the reality we've been presented with is a lie. It's a con, it's a fabrication to have you think a particular way, to have you act a particular way, and to support things that are clearly not in your best interest or in anyone's best interest other than the people who are going to profit from tragedy. Weapons manufacturers, you know, Lockheed and, you know, all these massive weapon, Raytheon, massive weapons companies, and the people who invested in them, like Nancy Pelosi and all the politicians who insider trade on this stuff. Now, as I said in my last video, there is a bunch of things that are happening and a bunch of things that are being revealed right now. So this period that we're in is this revelations. Maybe do a bit of reading on that. Yeah, end of days kind of stuff. The systems that we've been living in our entire lives are coming to an end, or being exposed for being scams or fraudulent, or, you know, there's a story in the Bible, whether you read it or not. I'm just going to give you, if you look at the Bible as a set of parables, a set of stories with a message to give you a message, okay? Now, there's a story in the Bible where Jesus, or Yeshua, or however you like to pronounce that, whether you believe who the real person or not, it's a story with a message. Yeshua, Jesus, went to the temple where the money changers were doing business. And he turned over the tables and said, "You will not do business in the house of the Lord." Okay? So if you know anything about the Vatican, one of the wealthiest organizations in the entire world, vast tunnels underneath Vatican City, Rome in Italy, treasures of gold and silver and art and knowledge from around the world that was collected by people that were acting on their behalf, like the Crusades and things like that, bringing back knowledge, information that most of us have never seen, never heard of. Vatican sits on that. You shall not do business in the house of the Lord. These people are supposed to represent a huge proportion of the population, Christianity, across the world, where they purport to speak through the Bible and support the message of the Bible, yet they're doing business in the house of the Lord. Now, for me, you know, I've spoken about this many times before. I don't follow a religion. I am spiritual in my own sense. I have my own connection to a higher power, whatever you want to call it, God, universal consciousness, don't care. It's a word. You get to decide what your belief system is. But I take on these parables and these messages, and it makes me, it helps me to come out here and be able to talk in about a variety of different subjects from a standpoint of, I've looked into it. I went to a Catholic school when I was young. I've looked into different religions and especially Catholicism and you know, I've touched on a few other ones as well. But these kind of stories, it highlights to me that, you know, this hypocrisy is rampant throughout all the organisations that run the world. The Vatican does indeed run the world. The three city-states that run the world: Vatican City, city-state unto itself, its own security force, its own money, everything. The City of London, has its own police force, and Bank of England is there, and blah blah blah, and Washington in the US. The money is London. The organisation and the brains of the operation is Vatican, and the hardware and the weapons is all controlled by Washington. So you have these three. Afternoon, how are we doing? All right?
Thank you, lovely afternoon.
Isn't it beautiful? So when I look at this hypocrisy that comes through all these organisations, it makes me wonder, and I revert back to these kind of parables and these stories, and it reminds me, these people are not here for us, and they will do everything in their power to make sure that their fraud and their scams and their thievery will not come to light. But it is, and it's coming to light in strange ways that you would never expect it to come out. Things like through what's happening in these different countries like Israel and Palestine, and Ukraine and Russia and Korea, Africa, Niger, and what's happening in Africa as well. All these things are exposing this system that controls our world through the financial powers of money creation out of nothing. We're going to see this exposure. The majority of people will see it. At first they're going to fight against it, because people like you and me have been sharing our stories and trying to share information to enlighten people. Now people are starting to see it for themselves and question. This is the opportunity for us to start asking people those questions that are difficult to answer. Do you think, perhaps, that what's happening in Israel and Palestine could have been handled differently? Do you think that Israel had foreknowledge of the attack that was coming? And if they did, why didn't they do anything? Why did they let innocent people die? Because it serves a purpose. What's happening is serving a purpose to us all, and we have to decide what we're going to do with it and how we're going to live with what's going to go on. If a wider war breaks out, how are we going to deal with that? Because the cost of everything is going to go up. Cost of fuel is going to go up because they're going to reduce the amount of oil that's being produced. OPEC does that. OPEC decides. So, how are you going to deal with the wider implications of what's coming? Because these are the questions you have to ask yourself now before it starts. Have you got enough food? Have you got enough water? Have you fueled your car up? Have you got some backup fuel? All these questions. What do you think that you're going to need should this blow up into a wider war? Let's just say, for instance, that maybe this isn't going to be the kickoff of World War III. Some other thing is going to instigate it, but something is. And who's talking peace? Who is the only person who's talking peace who says, I can have this solved in 24 hours? I'll let you go and find that out for yourself, because I'm not going to say it again, because it's, oh, you like that guy, you must be a racist. And a sexist and a misogynist and every other ist and ism, and label me away. Label away. I love it. Anyway, that said, I've been here long enough. I've taken enough of your time. Thank you one and all for joining me for this walk. It's been beautiful out here today. I could walk around here for hours, and I probably will once I've stopped the video. I'll probably keep on walking because it is just gorgeous out here today. And like I say, I hope this is wonderful where you are. Enjoy it while you can. This here, walking around here, it's free. Nothing to pay. Yeah, so why isn't all the world like that? Questions to be asked. Anyway, that said, things are happening, good and bad. Good comes from people noticing the bad. So see it for what it is and make decisions about how you're going to deal with it. That's what we have to do. So, that all said, go out into the world, do good, be good, and you can change the world with the way that you talk, the way that you think, the way that you interact with people, and the information that you share. So do that. You can make the world a better place. But most important, look after yourself, look after each other, and I look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care. Ciao for now.